soluble fiber on one end and insoluble fiber at the other. In between, we have many groupings like cellulose and lignans and hemicellulose, and then pectins and gums and mucilages. And all of these fiber have different functions, and they come from different sources. So therefore, taking a fiber supplement is not going to help you to get all the different kinds of fiber that we need. Some of these fibers are water-holding, like the fibrous wheat bran. This insoluble fiber acts like 7 times its own weight, which, to the relief of many, softens the stool and increases its volume. Others are gel-forming fibers, acting like stool softeners and stool lubricants. Still others enhance fermentability, which influences the growth of billions of needed bacteria in the colon, thus contributing to the immune system while also increasing colonic bulking. But the story really begins with a British surgeon named Dennis Burkitt. Now, during his 20-year surgical practice in Africa, Burkitt had only to remove 2 gallbladders, something he might have done in a single morning in any London hospital. But gallbladder disease was not the only condition rarely found in Africa. Most of the diseases Burkitt was trained to handle in England, from hemorrhoids to hernias and from constipation to colon cancer, were very rare in Africa, yet common and growing in England. Burkitt at that time was already famous because he had found the cure for a devastating disease in Africa that carried his name, the Burkitt lymphoma. But he now turned his questioning mind to the disparity between these disease rates. Could the difference of disease rates between England and native Africans possibly be explained by the difference in diet? On one hand, the European diet, high in meat, fat, and sugars, and highly processed foods. On the other hand, the native African diet, then coarse and gritty, high in grains and vegetables. And then it hit him one day when, of all things, he noticed African stools. African stools. These stools look different. They did not look like the British stools he remembered. These African stools actually were large and soft and moist, and indeed the very opposite of many British stools, which were all too often hard and dry and small, looking, as he described us, as like rabbit pellets. That's what he said. At the same time, they had plenty of constipation in Europe, as they also had in America, a country that Burkitt described at medical conventions as a country being constipated from coast to coast. And then he wondered about the transit time. You know, the time that food needs to travel from entry to exit? And so he devised an experiment with his African patients. He gave them deep red-colored berries to eat and told them, they will color your stools red. When you see red stools, be sure you come back at once to the clinic and let me know. Well, he expected these people to come back in 3 to 5 days because that was the common transit time for many English and American people. How shocked he was to see his patients jubilantly coming back within 24 hours and say, Dr. Burkitt, we found it. You know, as funny as it is, it ultimately led to the discovery of the role of the missing ingredient, dietary fiber, in its many different forms. Now we know that insoluble fiber, as found in grains, will provide greater satiety and a sense of fullness, which is so important in the management of overweight. You see, now you can eat more of these high fiber, low calorie foods and weigh less. Think of it. To eat more, feel full, no similar starvation diets, and yet you lose weight. Furthermore, we now also have an effective answer to constipation. You know, it's this water-holding ability of fiber in the intestinal tract that would be the fast forward for the passage of food from entry to exit. And here then are some of the hard facts on constipation. It's common in industrialized countries and it's spreading. The main causes relate to a highly refined diet, low in fiber, and inadequate hydration. Well, you saw the hard facts, but how about some soft results? And they relate to eating more fiber. And here you see a table of different kinds of foods with different numbers, grams in fiber. Look at that 1 cup of lentils, 15 grams. That's more than the average American, that's more than the average Western person eats in a whole day. Instead of getting a measly 12 to 15 grams of fiber commonly found in our modern food supply, how about shooting for at least 35 grams and getting our 8 glasses of water? And when you get your daily fiber and water, something happens. Sweet relief. No more straining. And no more time to read the Reader's Digest latest edition in the bathroom. You get in and you get out and you're done. Sweet relief. Now, let me show you the effects of a water-holding high-fiber diet in some other areas. Here you see 2 colons. The lumen of colon number 1 remains wide open because the high fiber content hydrates the stool. In contrast, the lumen of colon 2 is narrowed because of the low fiber content. This then causes dehydration, and with that, causes the waste material to be compressed, firm, if not hard and small. As a result, the colon must contract with extra force to move it along and expel it. And that puts extra pressure on the wall of the colon. And it's this pressure increase that may lead to outpoachings in the colonic wall, characteristic of diverticulosis. Of course, when this becomes infected, this can turn very painful. Here then are the facts about diverticulosis. Diverticulosis is uncommon before age 40, but about 1/3 of all Americans will develop the condition by age 60, and 2/3 will have it by age 85. That makes diverticulosis one of the most common medical conditions in the United States today. So, what are some of the contributing causes? Among the contributing causes listed are industrialization, economic development, grain refinement, and a low-fiber diet, leading to low fecal weight and long transit time, leading to increased intracolonic pressure and those very outpouchings. You know, Burkett had some other ideas, and he proposed that diet high in low in fat should also reduce colorectal cancer. A recent pooled analysis of over 14,000 colon cancer cases occurring close to 2 million people showed a 10% reduction in colon cancer for each 10 grams of fiber intake. Fiber, it's more important than you thought, isn't it? Well, perhaps I can say a word or two about the benefits of soluble fiber, commonly found in oats and legumes, fruits, and flaxseed. This kind of fiber is very effective in lowering the so-called bad LDL cholesterol levels in the blood. It does this by binding the bile acids, byproducts of fat digestion that are closely tied to cholesterol production. And as the cholesterol then goes down, so will the circulation-related chronic diseases. In addition, soluble fiber has been shown to stabilize blood sugar levels after a meal. And independent of the weight-reducing benefits in managing diabetes, high dietary fiber diets have demonstrated to be effective in lowering diabetic blood sugars and increasing insulin sensitivity as well. And isn't that what we all want to have happen, especially if we are at risk for diabetes? You know, with all these positive effects of dietary fiber, people sometimes come to me and say, now listen, aren't there any adverse effects? Oh, yes. There's one in particular. When people shift from a low fiber diet to a high fiber diet fairly rapidly, there's often, you ready? A gas problem. Yeah, and here at CHIP, we never ever have a gas shortage. It's always there. It always seems to happen every time, and it usually sets in after the first 10 days. That's what we always recommend to you during the second week after the program has begun. Start walking outdoors. But I want to assure you that this too shall pass. It usually takes about 3 to 4 weeks, and then it's usually over, especially if you take your recommended daily 8 glasses of water. Think of this gas eruption as a civil war in your colon between 2 kinds of bacteria. There's one kind of bacteria that is fed by the low fiber, high fat diet, and there's another bacteria, the good bacteria, that is fed by the high fiber, low fat diet. Both of these kinds of bacteria love their residents. I mean, after all, they don't pay any rent. It's nice and warm in that colon. They're being fed, and they multiply by the billions. And as the diet changes, however, the initially dominant bacteria diminish while the other bacteria begins to flourish. Now, both parties now begin to recognize that the survival is at stake. There's only room for one kind. And so both armies begin to think of war, and they begin to pull out their muskets. And as they fire these muskets, you can smell the gunpowder. But once the good bacteria have taken full and stable residence, everything is fine. No more war, no more muskets, no more smell of gunpowder. That is, unless you change your diet and it starts all over again. Don't you see how good nature is to us? It gives us all kinds of warning to keep us on the right track. Sometimes it's pain, and sometimes it's gas. So as you begin to summarize the contrasts between an optimal diet and the typical Western diet, here take a look. The optimal diet has at least 35 plus grams of fiber, while the Western diet only has about 10 to 15 grams. The consistency of the stool is soft on the optimal diet versus hard on the Western diet. The stool size is much larger on the optimal diet. The stool weight is much higher, and the frequency, it's a daily bowel movement, just about. But it's only 2 or 3 times in the Western diet, and it's usually with agony, with straining, no more. And the transit time on the optimal diet, what you eat today is out tomorrow. Nuts on the Western diet, it takes 3 to 4 days before you find it again. Yes, in constipation, it's just a memory for most people on the optimal diet, but common on the Western diet. Now, Dennis Burkett, this wonderful British surgeon, was a very colorful speaker. I mean, he would always close his farewell lecture with this slide, and he would always tell people, when it comes to our modern diseases, where you have small stools, you will have large hospitals. Where you have large stools, you will have small hospitals. Please have large, magnificent stools.
Our topic today deals with a somewhat delicate subject, to say the least. But in reality, it affects the quality of life for many people. I'm referring to chronic constipation. As with other conditions of a delicate nature, individuals are often hesitant to mention the subject to their doctors. The true medical definition of chronic constipation consists of 6 features. If you have at least 2 of the features, that qualifies for the condition. 1 is less than 3 movements per week. 2 is a sense of blockage with movement. 3 is straining 25% of the time. 4 is lumpy or hard movements 25% of the time. 5, incomplete emptying 25% of the time. And 6, manual maneuvers to assist 25% of the time. Common causes most often are not enough fiber, which you've heard a lot about, not enough water, and not enough physical activity. There are also medical conditions to consider. For instance, underactive thyroid, which can slow the body's metabolism. Then there's diabetes, which can affect the nerves that control the stomach and intestinal activity. Also, irritable bowel, in which the intestines are very sensitive to various triggers. Also, anxiety and depression conditions can cause constipation. Sometimes medicines can cause it as well. The common ones are iron supplements, which are taken for anemia. Also, some antihistamines for allergy sufferers. Antacids, which are taken for upset stomach, especially if they contain aluminum as an ingredient. Then there's calcium channel blockers, which is a type of blood pressure medicine. In addition, strong pain medicines taken for chronic pain syndromes may also cause this. So what do you do if you have this annoying problem? Well, this is definitely a case where lifestyle changes can make a big difference. Make sure you have sufficient fiber intake. Also, drink plenty of water, at least 6 to 8 glasses a day. But please take caution if you have a medical condition such as congestive heart failure and check with your doctor. And get plenty of physical activity on a daily basis. Now, many times individuals will treat themselves for this condition with over-the-counter laxatives. This can result in dependence on these medicines, and over time can actually change the lining of the intestines. There are 4 types of medicines for constipation, and they act in different ways. There's the bulk or fiber type laxatives. Then you have the stimulants that actually cause increased contraction of the muscles of the intestines. Then there's the osmotic type, which act by increasing water that is lost through the intestines. This type especially can lead to a low potassium level in the body. Then there are stool softeners that soften things up and make it easier to go. Now, although we have discussed constipation at length here, as you have heard, the benefits of a high fiber diet include much more than just helping with this condition. There's also the benefit of weight loss, improved intestinal health, improved blood sugar control, and lessening the possibility of some types of cancer. So once again, the best line of defense for this condition is sufficient fiber intake, sufficient water intake, and regular physical activity.
So what we've learned is there are so many benefits to increasing the fibre intake in our diet. Now, Anya, as a dietitian, how easy is that to do?
Darren, it's not difficult at all. In fact, it's a lot easier than you might think.
Okay, show me how.
All right, we'll start with breakfast, the first meal of the day, so a great opportunity to up your fibre. And we'll have a look at cornflakes. Now, we've got 1 cup of cornflakes here. It's about 1 gram, actually less than 1 gram of fibre.
There's less than 1 gram of fibre in here. Now, what would we be aiming for over the course of the day?
We're aiming for about 40 grams.
Oh, okay, so that hasn't got me a long way towards my target.
You'd have to eat a lot of cornflakes to get to that.
Right, so what can I do?
What you could do is simply replace the cornflakes with some oatmeal. 1 cup of oatmeal is about 4 grams of fibre.
Okay, so simply by changing from cornflakes to oatmeal, I've got 4 times more fibre at that first meal of the day.
That's right, but you can do even better. You can just add half a cup of raspberries, and you've doubled that again, so you've got 8 grams of fibre.
Fantastic. All right, now here's my question though. What about if I really like cornflakes?
If you really like your cornflakes, you don't have to go without it, of course. You'll just add raspberries or whatever fruit you like to the cornflakes.
So just by adding the raspberries to the cornflakes, I'd actually be up, around 5 grams?
4 to 5 grams of fibre. That's
excellent.
right.
Okay, well, that's breakfast. Let's look at a main meal.
Main meal. So what we've got prepared here is spaghetti, just a normal spaghetti and about half a cup of tomato-based sauce.
Okay.
Not a lot of fibre, it's about 5 grams.
5, okay, so this is pasta made on white flour, 5 grams of fibre.
Yeah.
What can I do to up my fibre?
Well, very easy. You could substitute with whole wheat pasta, so you've got about 8 grams of fibre.
Right, so we've gone from 5 grams to 8 grams just by changing the the going from the whole wheat
Pasta.
as compared to the white flour
That's correct,
as pasta.
yeah. But we can do much better than that. Being a main meal, we want to have a lot more fiber than 8 grams, so you can add half a cup of lentils, stir it through the sauce, and here we've got 16 grams of fiber.
Wow, okay, so just by adding some lentils to this dish, we've actually gone up to 16 grams. Now 16, that's a good way towards our goal of 40 for the day, isn't it?
That's correct. So lentils are really full of fiber, and legumes, so any beans, lentils, chickpeas, kidney beans, any of those, add that to a sauce and you've got a lot of fiber.
Okay, and once again, what about if I like this though? I don't like the brown pasta. What if I like the white pasta?
Same again, just change the sauce. And just to make a point, we didn't add any meat, chicken or fish.
Okay, so if I were to add some meat to this dish, how would that affect my fibre intake?
Not at all, which is why we didn't put it into the sauce. Animal products don't contain any fiber at all, so you really want to go for whole plant-based foods.
Right, okay. So I think the story that I'm hearing here and what I like is it seems very simple. I think I can even do this.
It's very simple, Darren. Anyone can do it, and it takes no time at all. You don't need to do without your favorite foods. You simply add a few things and up the fiber in that way.
So there you have it, folks. So it's often said, don't try this at home. Well, we encourage you. Try this out at home. Simple to do. Increase your fibre intake, and your body will thank you for it.
So there we heard about fiber, probably more than we wanted to know about some of its effects on us. But anyway, so remember that the plant, the fibrous part of the plant that actually forms the framework for the plant is actually where the fiber is. And our body cannot digest that. And initially, when people were thinking about this, because the fiber goes through the digestive system relatively intact, they didn't think it was actually important, when in fact it is very important. Because the shorter transit times means less carcinogens and other harmful end products of digestion. And also with respect to blood glucose, if you have the fiber incorporated with the food, your blood glucose levels will maintain a more steady state. Because once you remove the fiber, then the body really absorbs all that, the carbohydrates and the fats and such, much quicker, and so you get a much higher blood glucose spike if you remove the fiber. And so, again, it assists digestion, and beyond constipation, just want to kind of identify that it decreases the risk of heart disease and stroke because the fiber kind of draws out the bad cholesterol and binds it up to remove it from the body. And it also decreases the risk of some cancers, especially colorectal cancer and breast cancer, because again, if you have lots of fiber in your diet, it removes some of those carcinogens and toxins and stuff quickly from the body. And as I mentioned, decreases the risk or improves your type 2 diabetes because you get a more steady blood glucose level when your food has lots of fiber in it. And of course, it helps control weight because you have a low caloric density when you have fiber because you have lots of water and the fiber in the food on that. And then again, just a look at some of the things that provide fiber. It was kind of nice at the end of the video where they were looking at cornflakes and oatmeal and then raspberries. So it's not necessarily you only have to eat one thing. You can kind of combine foods together and still increase your fiber intake. So are there any questions that anybody has?
Well, I do. You said the plant food, that the plant food is hard to digest.
Mm-hmm.
So they said what they want us to taste out there is plant food?
Oh, it's not that big.
I was just saying, up there it said plant food was hard to digest.
Yes,
Okay, but ain't that what they introducing us to is plant food out here?
yes. But we mean hard to digest.
You know, it don't go down right, you know.
Well, that's because of the flora within your gut, the bacteria and such. So if your bacteria is not used to it, that's what causes the gas.
But once you get used to it.
Once you get used to it, yes. And that's what he said, it takes 3 to 4 weeks.
I just was reading and
Oh, sorry. Yes, we said it takes 3 to 4 weeks, and then your body gets used to it, and it doesn't cause any problems then. But it does take a while. And it's easier if you just kind of move once, as opposed to moving back and forth between the two diets and having to go through that. You know, so it's like you're constantly having gas because you keep changing your diet. Any other questions? Well, thank you. This evening, we actually have whole wheat bread. Again, the whole wheat, so it has fiber in it. It's been warmed up. Be good. But before we go, let's just have a quick moment of prayer for that. So, dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to share some of your knowledge about nutrition and how it can benefit our bodies, to glorify you. And thank you for Paula making the bread this evening, that we might have a chance to taste food that has plenty of fiber in it. We ask this in Jesus Christ's name, amen. And the samples are the usual place, so please enjoy. Thank you.
Is there any way to get these PowerPoints for this fiber thing,
For the what?
for the fiber deal?
Paul can probably.
Yeah, so I'll just leave it. Yeah, because I need to post it on my wall. My memory's not. Okay, so we use the tinfoil that's around it for enhancement of the beauty of the product.
Oh, thank you.
Just like your rest.